All right, welcome back, everybody. We're following this breaking news with the verdict coming out of the Alex Jones trial, and we're talking about punitive damages here. Of course, the compensatory damages yesterday, they were issued to the family there that was suing Jones. This is one of three trials that we're going to be watching. Yesterday, the compensatory damages were, I believe, $4.1 million. We're now getting the verdict in for these punitive damages, in which the attorneys for the Sandy Hook families said, in fact, you should punish this guy. He is worth, it seems, upwards of $270 million. And we're hearing now on question one, as I'm being told, they have issued $4.2 million in punitive damages, Danny Cevallos. Question two, $20.5 million. And then number three is $20.5 million as well. So we're looking at a total of punitive damages for this first trial being around, what, $44 million.
Right, but if they're doing it by counts, I don't know how many, there may be more counts than just those three. So I don't know if they're finished reading the verdict yet, but so what they're saying is they're adding up, they're apparently dividing it by each count. If the answer to the first question is, you know, what do you award on this count? What do you award on this count? Yeah. So we're seeing that those would be aggregated. So if you said 4 million, 20 million, and 20 million, we're looking at about 44 million, if that's the math that is coming in. And of course, we're just getting this in as we're talking here. So
so it's a total of $45.2 million in punitive damages for this lawsuit filed by the parents of Sandy Hook shooting victim, Jesse Lewis.
Right. So your total is $44 million. Now, the interesting part is that Texas has a punitive damages cap. It's a bit of a complicated formula, but the bottom line is that the maximum that I believe they would have been entitled to, the plaintiffs, is doubling of the compensatory damages award. So that gets you to 8.2 plus $750,000. So at most, I believe the most they could have gotten is $8,750,000. So some of that might be overage that the plaintiffs will never see. And of course, I may have calculated my Texas punitive damages wrong. Not a Texas lawyer. Haven't dealt with that punitive damages rule. But the point is there is a cap, and it is a sliding scale, that cap. It depends, believe it or not, on the award of compensatory damages. It's a multiple of what the compensatory damages are. There was an interview yesterday with the plaintiff's attorney, and he was talking of the multiples. And I believe that's what he meant, is that the limit on your punitive damages depends on what you got for compensatory damages.
This is obviously something that the jury does not necessarily know. They have not been advised of.
They do not. And to me, I think the plaintiffs, the reason they were asking for such a big number is for nothing else than the symbolic value, to hang that kind of verdict on Alex Jones, even if the punitive damages cap in Texas precludes them from ever actually recovering it. It is still a good number to hang on Alex Jones as a defendant in this case. So that may have been part of the strategy for asking for that kind of number. But again, even any of these numbers in punitive damages cases are different from compensatories, because the jury is not thinking about, they're not looking at medical bills or, you know, trying to put a dollar value on an injury to a shoulder or a leg. They're going in the back room and saying, how angry are we?
How angry are we? That's literally the question that they're answering. Let's bring in David Henderson, who's been standing by for us as well, to just get some reaction on this verdict. David, talk to me. We're hearing now $45.2 million essentially in punitive damages here. That's in addition to yesterday's verdict of 4.1 in compensatory damages. What's your reaction?
You know, Yasmin, that sends a huge message, which is what you hope for in this case, because regardless of how much families actually get to take home, these big verdicts do send a message. And I think they also help the family with closure. Danny hit the nail on the head, as usual, though, with regard to Texas law. We're a tort reform state, so we severely limit what families can actually take home. His math is correct. They get 2 times compensatory damages. And in addition to that, non-compensatory damages are capped at $750,000. And here's the way you think about that. Damages that you can show a receipt for, you multiply those by 2, then you add the damages you can't show a receipt for, like pain and suffering, but those are capped at $750. Basically, all of the damages in this case are pain and suffering damages. So the amount that he will actually pay in punitive damages, despite this $40+ million, he will pay $1.5 million, which shows how woefully inadequate our laws are.
Well, that's exactly right, because when you think about how much he's possibly worth, upwards of $270 million, and the pain that he caused these families because of the lies that he spread, and he's essentially just paying $1 million or so. That's a drop in the bucket for a guy like Alex Jones. Even with 2 more trials ahead, he knows going into this, there's a cap to everything.
Yeah, the unfortunate truth here is that all of his antics, all of his offensive behavior, which the jury obviously rejected or they wouldn't have given this reward, based on the law, indicates that he won. That's right. The amount that he actually pays is minimal. And we need to ask ourselves some hard questions about why that type of result should be in place when the jury clearly wanted something different. And you have to remember, the jury is there to speak on behalf of the people. They're there to speak on behalf of all of us who clearly want a different result than what the law is going to allow for.
Danny, are there other caps in states outside of Texas, or is this kind of just more particular to the state of Texas?
Oh, yes. There are caps in lots of states. You most commonly see them in medical malpractice cases. And David is absolutely right. I mean, these caps, you usually see them in conservative states where they've tried to limit what they describe as runaway juries or runaway plaintiffs' attorneys. And look, I'm biased. I do plaintiffs' work. But you see, especially in med mal cases, in this case, it's harder to see because at its core, these damages award.
Protections for corporations.
Of course, it's defendant protections, protections for doctors, protections for corporations, defendants in general. It's a little harder to see the injustice here because at its core, this was always a difficult damages case to calculate. But you think about it in the med mal context, sometimes people need care for an injury that was caused to them by malpractice, and they need $100,000 worth of care every year. And when you look at it that way, $1 million cap, it doesn't seem like as much as it might to other folks. It might seem like a big dollar amount to the legislators who passed that law. But when you look at lifetime care costs, I mean, multi-millions. So these caps are illusory. They are not really, they're not helping regular folks. It's not about runaway juries. It's not about plaintiffs' attorneys getting rich. It really isn't. But then again, keep in mind, I'm biased because I actually practice a lot of plaintiffs' work.
David, it seems to me at the end of the day, this is really a message that the Sandy Hook families wanted to be sent, right? This obviously is not about money for them. I mean, this is about the children, the babies that they lost, and the emotional damage that they face, but also to send a message that you can't do this to people, right? Because they knew going in this cap existed. I'm sure they had been advised by their own attorneys this, in fact, was in place. And at the end of the day, he was not going to have to pay out a lot, no matter what the jury awarded them.
Yasmin, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, a big part of my experience as a lawyer involves dealing with parents in court who had something terrible happen to their child. Whenever you see that there's a big award, regardless of what people are going to take home, that reward is there, as we say at our firm, what's good for your life is bad for your case, what's bad for your case is good for your life. So these big numbers reflect these people went through a substantial amount of suffering because of what Jones did. And if you ask them, they'd rather none of this had ever happened.
Exactly.
And in that context, yes, this sends a very important message that the jury agreed with them. And again, since they speak on behalf of the people, what they state really should carry the day. And it's unfortunate here that it's not going to.
Again, I will restate, the jury has awarded Sandy Hook families that have sued Alex Jones in punitive damages a total of $45 million today. That is in addition to the 4.1 in compensatory damages yesterday. And this is the first of 3 cases we'll be watching with this.